President Obama saying privatizing the VA will only, quote, delay the progress. Well, it's already, he's saying that it's already made, but let's face it. By the way, he also added that veterans, quote, are extremely satisfied and that the quality of care is very high. But not everyone agrees with this. Florida Republican Congressman Ron DeSantis says the VA is far from being fixed. Congressman, thanks for joining us. It's infuriating to hear President Obama make those sort of statements when so many people have died on waiting lists, when the problems have gone on, and to many accounts have actually gotten worse despite being highlighted over the last couple of years.
Well, the waiting lists now are worse than they were when the scandal first broke a couple years ago. And the VA secretary, who the president just gave a big vote of confidence to, he dismissed these long waiting lists, said, hey, you don't complain if you're on a waiting list at Space Mountain at Disney. It's the overall experience. Well, if a veteran can't get the care they need because of that waiting list, of course that's important. So what you've seen is there's no accountability in the VA. We in the Congress have urged the secretary to use some of the tools we've provided to fire some of the bad senior executives. They fired very few people, and so I think if a veteran is stuck on one of these waiting lists, they should be able to go to a private caregiver to get the care they need. They should not be forced to wait for the bureaucracy to get its house in order.
So we got two things here. Accountability, because even though they brought in a private sector guy, who, by the way, as a vet, just as you are, you're a Navy vet, you were involved with SEAL Team 1, seemed to be, I wouldn't say necessarily detached from the emotional aspects of what's going on there, but certainly his comments were really terrible, clumsy, ham-fisted. Do we start at the top? Do we start with someone new? Or is the bottom line that the bureaucracy is so, it's a maze of bureaucracy no matter who's at the top? Is that one of the issues also?
Well, I think that new leadership is important, but I think we've got to bring accountability to the bureaucracy.
But who do we start with, though? Whose head's got to go to wake everyone up, to make them understand that, hey, you just can't sleepwalk through this job and you can't go through here with an indifferent attitude?
It's got to be the average VA person who is actually dealing with the veterans.
That lifelong person who's got this lifelong gig, no accountability, comes and goes as they want, nothing ever improves.
And if you're not doing a good job for the veteran, then we got to get someone else in there who's going to do a good job. But this idea that you can let veterans toil on the waiting list and somehow you're never held accountable, that lack of accountability, even if you had a new leader at the top, if the system is just not moving, then it's going to be difficult. So we want to bring those changes. Accountability
seems to be a four-letter word in Washington, D.C., no matter what party is in control, but certainly more so on a Democrat. So how can you get that through, particularly under President Obama and potentially President Clinton?
Well, it's tough with the current president. So we passed a bill in the House that said all you VA people, you're going to be held accountable if you're not doing a good job, and Obama threatened to veto it. It has not gotten through the Senate yet, but I think it's something that people need to take the case to the American people about it.
Before I let you go, what's the opposition to what you just said in terms of being able, the list is long, the waiting is long, let me use the nearby private hospital, give me a card or a voucher or something? Who is opposed to that? What are they saying? How do they justify opposition to that?
I think it's philosophical. They believe in a government-run system, and the VA is one example of that. And my view is what the American people and the government owe the veteran is the care. It doesn't have to be through the VA. If it needs to be through somewhere else, then they need to do that.
The operative word there is we owe them this.
Absolutely.
Representative DeSantis, thank you very much.